Timeless Volume 3, Issue Number 1. This was an amazing story, so good I read it twice. Marvel has been doing these timeless one-shot issues, giving readers a sneak peek of what's to come for the following year. And this issue was no different, as we see from this amazing cover art what looks to be Moon Knight and none other than the bulletproof man Luke Cage himself. But he's rocking a gray beard, which means he is a bit older, so this story does take place in the future. Like I said, I read this story twice, and it's really good. I hope you guys pick it up from your local comic book stores, or just, you know what, settle for listening to me give you guys a paraphrase and a summarize of this, because either way, it's going to be good, but my version is going to be a lot better. The first two issues of Timeless, or two or three, dealt with Kang the Conqueror, as Kang is synonymous with time. But this story here went away from Kang. As we know, currently Kang is a bit he is being held or fought over, if you will, by the Avengers and some other kind of ancient high group super team. And the Avengers want information from Kang, and this group basically wants to have Kang answer for his crimes that he's committed. But this one, they stepped away from Kang the Conqueror, and rightfully so. He's a bit out of commission. So this one is central in dealing with Moon Knight, or so you think, and Luke Cage Power Man. Let's dive in. Basically, we see here yesterday in this current timeline here a lot of comic blurbs, a lot of dialogue going on, and who is it? None other than a modern version of Luke Cage. Got his old yellow outfit on, that cardigan, if you will, the classic iconic chain belt, and that must be Danny Rand sitting across from him. Notice he's eating what seems to be a salad or something like that from a large bowl, or some type of like Asian food as he's holding chopsticks, and Luke Cage has just a plate of classic American favorites at a diner, pancakes, sausage, and eggs, if you will, and they're having dialogue. This here is basically the beginning of Heroes for Hire in a modern rendition of this, and I really like it, the way they design the characters, Luke Cage and Danny Rand to be. They share some jokes, especially about the Iron Fist. Now, Danny Rand mentions to Luke Cage, how do you basically stop or defeat a dragon? Telling him that you punch it through the heart. Now, keep that in mind, because that's going to come up later in this amazing story. Now we see in the upper left that comic lettering blurb says, and this is how it ends. And now we are fast forward into some dystopian future, if you will, and we see some pyramid floating there in what appears to be space, and it is wrapped and surrounded by some kind of chains and some kind of a globe or an orb or a ball. And they're basically, it appears to be like it's shooting, or it's tethered to some kind of line, if you will, from planet Earth. Now, judging by the pyramid and the beginning cover, many of you are tying Moon Knight to this. So basically, in this future, in this town here, Moon Knight, basically people are traveling from all around the world, or from wherever they're coming from. You see families there with their children. And there you see the figure there in the black outfit with a hood. They're the one that's doing the narrating. That is none other than Luke Cage Power Man. And he's speaking about the current events and how people are traveling to this attraction here, this pyramid that's inside of this globe, this orbiting globe ball. And there you see these floating people in these balls here that would appear to be giving people some kind of gifts. So it appears that Moon Knight is involved with some kind of like Messiah story arc here, some Messiah complex, to where people are driving and traveling, hundreds of miles to get to this destination in order for some type of salvation. And in classic fashion, whenever we see a story like this, where there's one individual that's basically trying to change and help people to see the truth, Luke Cage now begins to have a conversation with a family that appears to be happy, right? One of their children received an apple from what appeared to be an angel, or a herald of Moon Knight, if you will, or perhaps even the god Khonshu. And Luke Cage is basically saying this is all smoke and mirrors. This is all a lie. This ritual is actually going to end up killing all of you. and he's basically trying to expose here. Luke Cage stands defiant as the only opposition to whatever this uh, cult-like religious um, gathering for in the name of Moon Knight or Khonshu that's going on here. And Luke Cage, he's cloaked, he's robed, kind of looking like Obi-Wan Kenobi there in Mandalorian. Even though I didn't watch Mandalorian, I know that Obi-Wan wears a robe and a hood. And so Luke Cage is basically here and watching over these people, narrating to his displeasure because basically, like sheep, they're all apparently just going to slaughter. And Luke Cage is mentioning that this city is cursed and that the towers and the architecture around it used to feel like home. But tonight, on this fateful night, all anyone else can do is run. But Luke Cage, he's going to plan to tear this city to the fucking ground. And we see here basically a prophet of Moon Knight or Khonshu, one of his puppets, basically reinforcing and giving the people of this city lip service and telling them that have no fear, for tonight the mighty god Khonshu completes his work. Meanwhile, the narrations of Luke Cage are basically saying that he feels something when he steps into the light. Now he has removed his hood. Everyone can see him, and he can now see a bit more clearly without that hood on his head. But he feels something. Now, this is very important because I love what they did in this issue of Timeless. There are several instances where we're going to see Luke Cage and even the adversary he battles, Moon Knight. They periodically receive floods, these flash floods of memories. Now, these memories are of the past, they're in the future, but these memories, which is so fucking cool, are of the upcoming Marvel stories that we're going to get in the year 2024. So the first one, Luke Cage is beginning, he gets kind of these uncontrollable memory contractions, if you will, and certain things trigger them. So the first one that we're going to get is very interesting, and we're going to go through a little bit of them and kind of try to explain as much as we can from what we have. And starting with the upper left, we see Moon Knight, some kind of Moon Knight character battling some enemies. We see, I don't know who that guy in the black here, right, dead smack in the middle. To the right, we see what appears to be Marvel zombies. That appears to be Iron Man zombie that's standing up there. I believe that is Constrictor right there with the that panel, that piece going down the center of his head there. But that appears to be some kind of zombie story arc. One thing I thought was very funny and cool was there you see in the bottom left there, someone's reading an Immortal Thor comic. Now that figure, I'm gonna say that's probably Dario Ager, CEO of Roxxon, because he is kind of like obsessed with Thor and just control. Then we see what appears to be like the Green Goblin, possibly Norman Osborn right there on the right side. But just below that, we've got Blade fighting the Hulk. Now that one is going to be a little bit more present, maybe January, January's issue of Blade. If you're not reading the ongoing series of Blade, you definitely should be. I've done a video on that on my channel. But the actually next issue of that, Blade and the Hulk are going to have a crossover. Marvel is basically kind of giving Hulk kind of a world tour throughout a number of comics. He's appearing in addition to having his own ongoing series. But this here panel is very, very cool. I really love how the artists, the creative team, what's going to be even more cool is if the issues that these books are from actually look like this or pretty similar to this, but I'm imagining that these Marvel Publishing, this creative team, they do a lot of pre-planning, and really, really excited to see these stories that they got coming out for us in 2024. Luke Cage comes back too. The flooding memory and the pain with it are gone, and Luke Cage is back in this city looking at the people and just people watching and observing. And he begins more narration, more self reflection. Now, this part's very, very interesting and cool because basically Luke Cage is beginning to describe himself. Now, he's not going by Luke Cage in this instance, he's going by Power Man, and you're about to see why he's going by Power Man, because power is indeed what he has. Now, Luke Cage in one of the previous panels mentioned that he's trying to breathe like Bruce taught him, focus like Reed, Reed Richards, Bruce being Bruce Banner. Now, Bruce Banner, because we see here in this kind of uh, cascading this progressive panel here of Luke Cage, and the art is amazing, is that he basically first describes that he is the last confessor of the Sentry. That's right. So this version of Luke Cage Power Man has the power of the Sentry, and we know that that power, unlike the super soldier serum itself, that power, I guess, does pass from certain individuals. And we also see that Luke Cage has the blood of the Hulk running through his veins. So that's right. So if they wanted to make an OP character, well, here the fuck you go, because you got Luke Cage with his skill set and his power abilities, add the Sentry, and then add the Hulk. That just sounds like a mega ultimate overpowered character, which this dystopian future needs that, because apparently the age of heroes, as Luke Cage is describing in his self-reflection, is over and everyone else is dead, and he's the last of his Marvel age of hero peers. So I'm imagining before any of them had passed, he got the power of the Sentry. The Hulk, oftentimes people try to take his power and use his blood, tissue samples, things like that, so they can Hulk out. And so he has that. So it's really cool that Luke Cage has been the one that's kind of entrusted with these, prominent powers from these, highly prolific characters, very powerful characters, to somehow protect or do something in the future, because he mentions he can't stop Khonshu. Okay, right? Luke Cage isn't giving up, but he can't stop Khonshu. But damn it, he's not going to go down fighting. He's not going to go down without a fight. And with those powers, with that set, you bet your ass he's going to fight. And here we see now the culmination of Luke Cage's transformation, and he proclaims, "I am Power Man." And that he is. He is powers man, more than one power. And just look at how awesome he looks now. That robe fully off. We see remnants of the Sentry there, I believe, with that yellow or green. Pardon me, I'm a bit colorblind. With that cape there, and then we see the cape is attached or held there with that classic Luke Cage acting as a sash going diagonally across the body. And then we see also now, one part I forgot to mention was that Luke Cage, on top of the Sentry's power, on top of the Hulk's blood and power inside of him, and on top of his skill set, he also has his former hero for hire brother, Danny Rand. He has the Iron Fist. There you see Luke Cage's right fist glowing. There he has the Iron Fist. So if you wanted to make an OP character, well, here the fuck he is. Timeless, Volume 3, Issue number 1 version of Luke Cage. And he is about to do some serious damage. And the damage he does is to that seemingly glowing orb or ball that we saw a few pages ago. This is what Luke Cage, the moment he was leading up to, and he takes that Iron Fist and smashes it right in there. And to destroy this ball, right? Now he knows, again, he can't stop what Khonshu has done. He can just kind of be an ass to them and annoy them, right? Just kind of delay the inevitable, if you will. But, he's not going to stand idly by and do nothing. And he mentions here that it took Khonshu and his puppet, right, who we're referring to, we're going to assume is Moon Knight, decades to build the machine. He refers to this thing as the machine, right? And this must be something he was using to influence the masses, or to, coerce them into some kind of cult-like ritual or whatever. But basically, Luke Cage smashes that shit. So yeah, if you really wanted to get Khonshu's attention and annoy the fuck out of him, then yeah, destroying something that took nearly a decade to build does the trick. And Luke Cage, we see the effects of that punch at what looks like, it looked like the sun. It fried the Iron Fist, through his hand, through to his cells, and you see like his blood veins and tendons and stuff like that there. And his right arm from the elbow down, seems to be fried. But Luke Cage does have the blood of the Hulk. Hulk has a incredible healing factor, so that's gonna heal. We see it. There's smoke, as if he fired a gun from that arm, and it's beginning to heal. And while it's healing, he has garnered the attention of that puppet, Khonshu's puppet, none other than Moon Knight himself. Now, is this Mark Spector? Did Mark Spector live this long? Does Khonshu provide powers of immortality? I don't know. But this Moon Knight is now arriving and beginning to trash talk and saying all that training, all that time, all that effort, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the life that you led. Basically saying it was for nothing, right? What was it for? Because we've already won, right? Maybe he's wrong. Come die at the hand of the immortal Moon Knight, says the immortal Moon Knight, right? Now, this Moon Knight here looks a little bit slender. He's in some kind of new futuristic outfit attire, still though seeming the white or silver there. He's got the belt there of the Egyptian Ankh wrapped around, and Luke Cage now says still funny. So that is implying that Luke Cage knows who this person is, knows who this Moon Knight is. Is it Mark Spector? I don't know. But basically, he says to Luke Cage, hey, you should have stayed down. And now I'm going to have to keep you down. Ding, ding, ding. Let the battle begin. Moon Knight calls upon the Khonshu power to give some kind of Tien from Dragon Ball Z fucking tri-beam blast, right? And he blasts it at Luke Cage's other hand. Luke Cage's hands and arms just take a lot of damage in this book, and you're going to see that. But basically, he's telling him, no, man, it was you, not Khonshu, it was you. And Luke Cage, look, guys, he mentions the White Sky event, and he says that it was you who bought Stark Unlimited. Okay, so and it was you who mastered the eye. These are very, very important events that Luke Cage has just mentioned in this dialogue during the fight, because I do believe we're going to see these pivotal events happen in 2024 in Marvel Comics. Now, Danny Rand, apparently Moon Knight has money. He comes from wealth, I believe. I'm not familiar with Iron Fist, but even Luke Cage is now calling it out, right? Saying that you made yourself an Eternal, and you stole the power of the Iron Fist. So, and he says, and what did you do with it? You turned our world over to a monster. That monster being the immortal Egyptian god Khonshu. And Luke Cage hit Moon Knight so hard that it knocked his helmet off to reveal that's not Mark Spector. That's his old friend. Look, he says, you punched me in the heart, Luke. The only monster here is you. That is Danny Rand, ladies and gentlemen. That is the Iron Fist. That is the other half of the Heroes for Hire. Wow, what a story around two former best friends, former partners, former crime fighters, dynamic duos, and Danny does look kind of cracked out, right? Like he's on like meth or some shit. And Luke Cage even notices that first. He's like, honestly, Danny, you look like shit. And and right after that, that must have been the trigger word, because shit is exactly what they're about to experience and feel. Because now one of those memory contractions, they both are experiencing it now. There you see Danny grabbing his head, wincing in pain. Luke Cage grabbing both, taking both hands to grab, and now they're both going to experience a rush of memories, and which is going to give us another sneak peek into the Marvel Comics universe 2024. Now I am salivating at this one. It's even juicier than its predecessor. Upper left corner looks like, I don't know, tombstone, a giant tombstone over New York City. To the right, we've got Doctor Doom raising his hand, triumphant, and we see apparently the Avengers are bowing, kneeling before him. We see Sam Wilson, Captain America. To the right of him, we do see the helmet, and that being Thor. And so the Avengers must be kneeling to Doctor Doom. To the left, this one's interesting. We see here, warning, danger room, no admittance, Prisoner X. Who the fuck is Prisoner X? Some kind of super mutant? To the right of that, we know who that is, Miles Morales, judging by that, the red and black suit there. And we see Moon Knight and Luke Cage's faces in a really cool illustration here on the side, either side. Now, right in the middle there, the bottom left, we have confirmation that that is a crossover event called Blood Hunt. So probably going to be 5 issues, maybe 6, Really interested in that because Marvel is starting to push Blade and obviously Blood being vampire, Blood Hunt, and we got the Avengers involved, some mutants as well, all rallying around a crossover for Blade, which is really, really cool, and I'm excited. But the fact that they mentioned it in Timeless just is basically an indicator that it's going to be one of these pivotal stories that is going to significantly alter and change or affect the Marvel comic universe. And the final right bottom panel picture we see there, what appears to be a red flaming skull, and I believe it is leaving that individual. Now, this is very important and this is very recent, as in Ghost Rider just went to issue number 21, but overall legacy number, I believe it's about 266, I believe. So there will be a new Ghost Rider. Johnny Blaze is no longer going to be the Ghost Rider, as he helped his lover Talia Warroad take out and suppress the efforts of the cult of Mephisto. And while he was riding back on his motorcycle on that long highway road, Mephisto appeared and basically said, "Hey, your time as Ghost Rider has come to an end, pal." So that there is very recent. I noticed a couple of these panels are from stories that are about to rear their head and basically depict what they're showing here in Timeless. So that was very cool. I do believe that individual was Johnny Blaze, and the spirit of vengeance was actually leaving his body. And Luke Cage, in almost a Vegeta like defiant scream and power up, if you will, he says, "Hell no." And he basically shatters that memory contraption, that warp that they were both stuck in momentarily. And Moon Knight, or Danny Rand, he commends Luke Cage and says, "Cute little trick, but Khonshu sees all. He's the god of all." And Luke Cage is just disgusted, just basically telling him, "You should hear yourself right now. And I don't even think that my old friend is even there anymore. But whoever the hell you are, listen to these two words: stay down," as he conjures up the power of the Sentry and the Iron Fist and Hulk to send this blast to knock his former friend into space. And blast the hell out of him he does, because we see Moon Knight, Danny, he's riding the wave of that blast, and very cool panel underneath from Earth, and this long green stream, that blast just pushes him further and further out into space. And basically, once he comes to a stop, Danny basically tells him, "You know what? You think you're hot shit, huh, Luke? You think you're invincible." And he basically says, "Well, you know what? Allow me to do for you what the moon did for me." Because he says that no matter what kind of bravado or confidence you may think you have, the Hulk's power, Century's power, my old Iron Fist, it doesn't matter, because Khonshu is all. And basically, he wants to sever Luke Cage's pride from him, which is apparently now what the Moon or Khonshu did to Danny Rand. And we see he forms some kind of Moon Knight like sickle, if you will. And it's some kind of sickle blade here in the form of a moon, a crescent moon, if you will. And he's now looking to do some serious damage to his former friend. And god damn, slice! Look at that. Serious damage being an understatement. Look at the expression on Luke Cage's face. There was no comic bubble. He didn't or just nothing. So he must be that powerful, where like getting his arm sliced in half, severed away from him, doesn't even register or like any pain at all for him to like, it doesn't even constitute like an audible response, a scream, nothing. And this, there we see him kind of staring at it, kind of reminiscent of when Malekith the Accursed severed off Thor's arm, but Thor did scream a great scream in pain. But here we see Luke Cage kind of just looking at it, just kind of deer in the headlights. It's like, well, there's my arm, there's my blood, just floating in space. Maybe that's why there's no pain, because they're in space, and I don't know. I don't know. That's just really trippy how he's just staring at his arm and he's like not even screaming or doing anything at all. And to add insult to injury, now Danny Rand Moon Knight is standing, standing, hovering, floating above his former friend Luke Cage, who's now lost a considerable amount of weight, and basically just boasting and telling him like, "Do you see? Do you see now?" and basically saying, how powerful he is and how omnipotent he is and how even more omnipotent Khonshu is to control that which lies beyond. And he reduces, Luke Cage to saying, you're just a man floating in space, missing an arm. See you later, pal. Well, Luke Cage has other things in plan for Danny Rand, you see, because Luke Cage does have the blood of Bruce Banner, the Hulk, running through his veins. So while he's sitting there floating in space, thinking about how good a Hot Pocket would be right now, and he's basically fixed his arm, or I believe Moon Knight did that. I think Danny Rand used the power of the moon to stop the bleeding on his arm, but he says, I'm a Hulk, and Hulks smash. And by an awesome surge of energy, you see there, he says, and Hulks smash. And if you notice there to the left, it's a view of the city or planet there, that pyramid. There's a giant obelisk. Okay, for those, if you know, you know, but there's an obelisk there. And he smashes, comes down on Danny Rand, and he smashes him so hard, basically like a body slam from space. Who knows how fast he was going? But apparently fast enough, because the flight and the speed and the power of a million exploding suns coming from the power of the Sentry. And look at the after effects. There you see he's just destroyed. He's crumbled. He's weakened. Things about him are shattered. And look at his face now. His helmet's gone again. And now we see, based on the altered comic bubble, we know now that it's some kind of other entity that is speaking. And we're about to go into yet our third blast from the past, if you will, from the Age of Heroes. And Luke Cage now, there you see him squinting, closing his eyes, and he's beginning to have the pains of one of those flashbacks. But this time, almost as if he's mastered it, this time he refuses to be swept away and a victim of these memories. This time he remembers. And here we see an awesome panel here, guys, and this is really cool. What appears to be Punisher War Machine. That is fucking right. Now, Frank Castle is currently in Weird World, and who's he backhanding while Power Man backhands Moon Knight? That is the current volume of Punisher. That is the antagonist. That is Joe Garrison, the former gravedigger of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's right, the dismembered S.H.I.E.L.D. had a gravedigger who had a similar skill set to Frank Castle. But is that Frank Castle in the Punisher War Machine armor? I don't know. But he's backhanding him, so it just might be. Then we get this kind of young Teen Titan kind of crew here of Avengers. We got, I don't know who that bitch on the far left is, but we got Spider-Boy, upper left corner there, and a host of other characters here. The girl in the middle with the star on her chest, that has to be synonymous with some kind of version of Captain America. And so, but they all appear to be young, up-and-coming heroes. This is very, very interesting, very cool. I'm excited. I'll probably be pulling all of these books, but Luke Cage is basically gathering inspiration from the past, these Age of Heroes, how they fought, how they looked in the eyes of gods, how they never gave up. And he remembers how they fought, and he draws inspiration from that to continue his fight, even though the odds are just seemingly stacked against him. And Luke Cage says, and I do the same, I fight. And here we see, look at this badass image here. What a left shovel hook to the chin, right on the button to Iron Fist. Danny Rand, the artist formerly known as Iron Fist. Take this, Khonshu, take this, Immortal. One-armed, just power, exuding power, beautiful shot, just knocking him. And we're going to see here Luke Cage just delivering some UFC worthy ground and pound on the moon, or wherever the fuck they are, and just bouncing Moon Knight's head, is bouncing his temple off this ground, off this floor, and just delivering blows like Luke Cage only can. And Luke Cage beats the Moon Knight off of his old friend Danny Rand, as you see the remnants of the armor. And it's Danny Rand with green blood oozing out of his nose. And Luke Cage is even, he says, Danny? And then Danny now says, this is very cool, he says, you look like such a badass. Because when Luke Cage, when he saw Danny's face. He said, you know what, Danny, you look like shit." But Danny now he sees Luke Cage is like, "Man, you look like a badass," and I mean, he does all all those powers combined. But this is very, very important, people. He says, you should see the other guy. Not that. But Danny basically says, "I thought I could make a change. I thought I could make the world a better place by what we're assuming was taking the power of Moon Knight, giving into Khonshu, right? Buying Stark Unlimited, doing the things that he did." And Luke Cage has no response. And Danny says, "You should have, killed me all those years ago when you had the chance to. But I am glad that it wasn't you who did it." Now this is canon. I believe in 2024, guys, we're gonna see some type of event that deals with Danny Rand. Now, currently, if you're following my videos on Luke Cage Gang War, Luke Cage actually recruits his former hero for hire friend Danny Rand to help him alongside his wife Jessica Jones and Cloak and Dagger. Now, Danny Rand does not have the Iron Fist. We know that because Iron Fist, the Iron Fist, is currently held by someone else. I don't know who, but Danny Rand he still has the reflexes, and he's still a black belt in various forms of martial arts. So I'm gonna be paying very close attention to Danny Rand, very close attention to what happens in the remainder of the Luke Cage version of Gang War, because we could very well see the steps, the moving parts to this story right here, to how they got to Danny Rand being Moon Knight and Khonshu and all of these things here. And gah, woo! Danny just one shots Luke Cage off of him yards away, and we see him perform some kind of supine back bridge like something out of The Exorcist. That's actually pretty impressive. Look, ma, no hands. And we see, based off of the lettering and comic bubbles, it's some kind of entity has taken over. Danny is not there. His body is. He's gone fishing. And this entity says, "His bones are mine to bend. His will is mine to sacrifice." And Luke Cage is triggered. He's, "I'll kill you for this, you monstrous piece of shit." And there we see the black bubble. It says, "You cannot kill what cannot die." And out of the mouth of Danny, this stretching, it appears to be a beak or some kind of bone. And so this is just telling me that Iron Fist, Danny Rand, at some point, he sacrifices himself to Khonshu, or he has dealings with Moon Knight. I don't know. I can't wait to see that story. But here we see the final, the arrival of the Lord of all, the God of gods here, Khonshu, as he's described in this depiction. And Luke Cage, looking at here, he has arrived at the final boss. Does Luke Cage have anything left in the tank to take this guy out? Now we get some more important information from Khonshu. He says this day has finally come, right? His this has been epochs in the making. This final sacrifice, this arrival, this ascension. Now this is important. Look, he says Mark Spector built a faith from madness. I'm not collecting Moon Knight, but if he starts over from another volume, I will. Daniel Rand built an engine from technology and magic. Technology, Stark Unlimited. Okay? Okay, the magic, where he got that from, he made himself an eternal. I don't know, guys, but it's some very important two parts. But Khonshu says neither of them were capable of being anything more than paladins. Right? Basically, that they couldn't achieve really anything else. But then Khonshu says, "But congratulations, Carl Lucas." He says his real name, his government name. "God has found you worthy of what? To be his herald." That's right, people. So Luke Cage, whatever he's become, he's got the attention of Khonshu to be his herald, to be more than Mark Spector, to be more than his friend Danny Rand, to be a herald of Khonshu. And Luke Cage, of course, reacts like you would expect, defying it. So much that Khonshu takes notice and tells him, he encourages him to fight it. Go ahead. He says, because you need to learn right now. Let's get it over with. Let's get this over with. It's best you learn now. that you are alone. I have chosen you to be the unconsumed witness of my feast, my herald. You are alone. There is no one else but me. Wow. And here we see Khonshu just magnified. He has no neck, not in a good way. And he says, I am become celestial. He's even forgotten how to speak and use proper grammar. I'm one to talk. But there you see him powering up some kind of orb, some energy ball there. He is now a celestial. Khonshu has become celestial. Guys, I am very unfamiliar with Moon Knight and his backstory and Khonshu and the Egyptian lore in Marvel Comics, but apparently there's going to be a big push next year in the comics for, this here, for one of them, for Khonshu, I guess, to try to rise to ascension, and to use Mark Spector and Daniel Rand as pawns, if you will. Now I don't know exactly why he chose Luke Cage, but he definitely did. This right here is so Dragon Ball Z worthy. I mean, you can feel the climax culminating. Look at this. Luke Cage powered down, missing an arm, meditating in space in a ready stance. And he's basically saying this is it. He's finally summarizing it all. This is what I've been feeling all this time, the shatter. And we see clips of him and Danny, old clips, retro clips, basically saying this is all that's left. Khonshu was consuming all that was, all that is, and all that will be. A final feast for the final god. He's acting as Galactus here, devouring, but not only devouring a world, devouring an entire universe, an entire existence, an entire being. And Luke Cage realizes, all that stands in his way here is just me, a weapon with nothing left in the tank. Or maybe something, and we see Luke Cage there. Now this is very symbolic, people, because he's unraveling his chain and wrapping that chain around his fist while he's speaking, while he's saying all is being consumed. Now that chain is symbolic because when something is chained, it is confined or caged, right? Chains and cages typically go hand in hand. Now it's very symbolic here that Luke Cage is going to utilize his classic iconic chain, right? Because it seems like that Khonshu has chained, he's confined reality, existence, this time, this dystopian future. He has chained it for his will, for his consumption, his feast, right? This final ritual. But Luke Cage is going to use that chain to undo what Khonshu has done. And there we see one of the most iconic, badass pages of this entire book. Luke Cage in the center, chain wrapped around his fist, iron fist ignited, and we see to the left of him his wife Jessica Jones, his allies and fallen friends, Spider-Woman, Wolverine. We see retro Captain Marvel. We see the upper right there, Sentry, one of the ones whose power he now wields. Right above, he's got Captain America. All these heroes, and he says there's always something to fight for. That is exactly what these heroes have always stood for, was that even in the face of seemingly impossible odds, they, as Thor said, they said nay. They said no. They dug down and they found a way. And in the bottom right corner, we see a quote from Danny. If you remember all the way back at the beginning, he gave Luke Cage a little tip about dragons when they first met at that diner. And the tip was that to defeat dragons, you hit them right through the heart. And that is exactly what Luke Cage, powered up, charged up, does to Khonshu. When you see there, he is ignited like a mini sun, or the Sentry power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, and he explodes right through this now self-proclaimed celestial. He explodes right through the supposed god of gods, and you see him defiant there, stiffed in this position with that chain wrapped around his hand, to his forearm, missing an arm, but he might as well not be missing an arm because his friends, his foe, his allies gave him the courage, and he blasts right through Khonshu and delivered a devastating blow, very reminiscent of one of the Dragon Ball Z movies from the day when Goku Super Saiyan 3 charged through the dragon Hirudegan with his special technique in Super Saiyan 3, the Dragon Fist. So maybe that is some kind of unanimous lore or way to defeat a dragon, is that you punch them or strike them, pierce them through the heart. And here we see Luke Cage basically saying that the impact, the shockwave, ripped at every atom that he had. And this is a familiar feeling, the shatter. And there you see a dragon, again, another Dragon Ball Z reference, very reminiscent of Shenron and the way he would appear, coiled and, coiled about and curled and waved throughout the air. You see shattered pieces even below him. And Luke Cage basically saying that it wasn't Khonshu, it wasn't guilt, it wasn't pain, as this is what he felt in those previous flashbacks. But it wasn't even his inevitable victory, and Luke Cage was saying it was mine. So how amazing is that? Was that at the beginning of this, it was just inevitable that it was Khonshu who was going to win. It was Khonshu. Luke Cage even believed that he couldn't do what he had just now done. All he could do was kind of delay the inevitable victory of Khonshu, that the feast was going to commence, it was going to proceed, but Luke Cage dug down deep. He mastered, he overcame these, what he's calling the shatter, these visions, these flashbacks, which are basically flash forwards for us into next year's, pivotal comic book moments. And he adapted, he overcame, and he remembered the age of heroes and how they always fought. That gave him the strength to dig down and dig deep and basically alter the course of this universe. And it, as you can see here, this shatter, a lot of these bubbles, like light bugs, if you will, and the crowd below that gathered there for Khonshu, they're witnessing kind of like there for a 4th of July or this amazing spectacle. And there appears to be individuals, people within these kind of like green egg orb balls. And this, I'm just really confused about this. I don't know if these were all the souls that Khonshu had fed on or the people that he had consumed. But Luke Cage punching him in the heart, very again, another Dragon Ball Z reference here. Cell Saga, okay, when Gohan punched Perfect Cell in the stomach and he throws up Android 18. Right? We see people drawn in all of these little bubbles. And this is just awesome. We see Luke Cage exhausted, he's spent, and he says, Jessica, his former wife, I think I did it. And that's just awesome because throughout all of this, he had his wife, Jessica Jones, who would have been deceased at this time in his heart, of course. And he says, this world, it'll have its future. It'll be a hard road, but they'll make it. They'll be together. And you see the people just watching this spectacle. Is this what we came here to see? All these like light bug orbs, these eggs is filled with people, it appears. What does it all mean? Well, I don't know what it means exactly, but it does mean victory. Luke Cage has won with the power of the Sentry, Iron Fist, and the Hulk, and the memories. And speaking of memories, Luke Cage, now he begins to feel it again. He lets go and he kind of just fades into time, he says. He falls into the time current. He steers into the current of time. And we get one more interesting sneak peek into the 2024 Marvel comic universe. And the upper left corner, we've got Stephen and Clea Strange coddling to a baby. Is that theirs? I believe that's Clea's sister, because that's what's going on right now in Doctor Strange. She has her sister. Now, to the right of that, we've got some individuals in trench coats, some kind of alien mafia. I don't know who those guys are from Men in Black. Luke Cage falling in the middle. To the left there, we've got classic. Is this another Civil War on our hands? Another Civil War? Captain America versus Iron Man. I do believe that is from the upcoming limited series Avengers Twilight, but it could foreshadow another Civil War. To the right of Luke Cage, we've got a giant-sized Bucky Barnes there, Winter Soldier, giving a left uppercut to what appears to be a star-spangled dinosaur. And he is really big because you see two individuals there looking on. So I think that's going to be in the Thunderbolts. And right below here, people, check this shit out. That's an X-Men team. That is. We know from the eyes there, the laser, that Cyclops to the right of him. We know that that's a female, a silhouette, long hair. It's got to be Jean Grey. Jean Grey is very synonymous with Cyclops. But look at who's in the fucking hovercraft chair. It's not Xavier. It's not a bald head. No, that is a silhouette of a helmet, a very iconic helmet, won by the master of magnetism, the Omega level mutant himself, Magneto, Eric Magnus Lencher. That's right, people. So we know that the X-Men, that Orcus has orchestrated their demise, and we know that we've got the Fall of X going on right now. And there's a lot of crossovers with this story. And I'm collecting all of them. I even have begun to cover some of them on my channel. Make sure you check them out. But is this going to be the resurrected version of the X-Men, or the new standard version of the X-Men going forward? Because we know all these stories, that they're canon, and we see Magneto. Or is this a what if? Is it a what if storyline, right? Where what if it was Magneto who was the head of the school for the gifted, and it was Xavier who was, right, the rebellious mutant antagonist? I don't know, but it looks good, and I'm excited. And here we see the time current stream taking Luke Cage through his own personal past, present, and future. We see him jogging there in a Rocky Balboa fashion as he continues to fall. We see him and his old friend Danny Rand in their retro hero for hire Luke Cage, with the headband and the fro there, and the yellow jacket and chain, and the classic retro Iron Fist there. And he keeps falling, and he's saying, I don't know if I'm being sent. I don't know if I'm being summoned. And there we see him at the bottom as Mayor Luke Cage. So this is canon, and I love that it is, right? The past, present, or past, and the present, and what could be the future. But he knows one thing. And that one thing is that was how it ended. And here we see this is today. So today must be current Earth 616 timeline. And there we see, boom, right? There we see the sun and what appears to be some other planet, maybe Mercury, I believe, and the Earth. And boom, we see this long green stream just traveling in that line there. And then we see a ping. Now, what could that ping mean? Some kind of notification, a sensor? What could that be? It is none other than Tony Stark's system notifying him of an object flying at incredible speeds. That object being the weapon, the Luke Cage, Power Man from the future. And this appears to be some kind of Avengers home base. Why? Well, because we see Sam Wilson, who is serving as Captain America for the Avengers. And he basically says, yo, we got action, Tony. Do I need to suit up? And, Tony Stark is checking it out, and he basically confirms, oh, no, false alarm. And basically, one more victory for the good guys, basically. And here we see the body now of Luke Cage, who crashed through space and time, and this future Luke Cage, Power Man, and he is just resting there. We see almost like his nervous system, if you will, his green gamma nervous system, as he just hovers in space, and there's this green box around him. So something must have identified him from some kind of ship's software or computer system. And we see there that now he begins to clench his fists, in basically indicating that there's life. He's not dead. So this future version of Luke Cage that altered basically reality, if you will, he beat Khonshu, he defeated Khonshu. He is alive in current Earth 616 continuity. Now, will he be appearing in comics, we don't know. I don't know, but I do believe that he will. Will he kind of stay in the background and see how things turn? I don't know. But what he does know, to recap, he doesn't know if he's being sent, if he's being summoned, but he knows that what he went through was how it ended. And this currently, right now, is how it began. So this is very, very interesting. Maybe what he's saying is that his very presence now, right, in some kind of butterfly effect fashion, is basically going to now lead to the future that he just now left. I don't know. Will he be able to basically guide the characters of the Marvel universe to make better choices so that they don't end up in that Khonshu ruled dystopian future? I don't know, but I am looking forward to finding out, and I hope you are too. Make sure to pull some exciting books, some Marvel books, DC too, if you love those. Thank you for sticking around if you have thus far. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been another episode of Trademark Comics, and until next time, I am out.